Hey guys, I know I said our next episode was going to be on Tuesday with Mike San Gregorio as we go through your comments and questions about the Supergirl film, and that's still coming tomorrow, so make sure you tune in. But today we have an extra special treat. I saw the Supergirl film for the second time, this time with my wife, Stephanie, and it was a wonderful experience. We had such a great post-viewing discussion about it, and I said, we got to get behind the mics and actually talk about this. So, at long last, my wife, the queen of the Digging for Kryptonite empire, makes her debut on the main Digging for Kryptonite feed. I really hope you enjoyed this discussion. I loved the perspective that she had, and it was great to hear from someone who is not as steeped in the comic book lore as I am and as so many of our audience members are. Her primary frame of reference for Supergirl was the Melissa Benoist TV series. So I was really curious how this film would play for her. And we had a magnificent chat. I'm really excited for you guys to hear it. So I hope you enjoy and come back tomorrow for the conclusion of our Supergirl movie coverage as Mike and I go through your comments and questions about the film and conduct a little bit of an opening weekend post-mortem. Also, please note that this episode contains spoilers for both the Supergirl film as well as the Woman of Tomorrow comic. You have been warned. Welcome to Digging for Kryptonite, a Supergirl fan journey. I'm your host, Anthony Desiato. Joining me to reconsider the 2026 Supergirl film after my second viewing and her first is my wife and first-time guest, Stephanie Desiato. Welcome.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Let me just ask you here, big picture, since I finally have you on Digging for Kryptonite proper. We've done Patreon things, but you're officially on the show here. Are you, I assume you're happy that I have this outlet of doing the podcast because obviously it's something I enjoy and it's productive and all of that, but also it does spare you from having to listen to all of my complaints. And you still get a fair amount of it because sometimes I like to workshop what I'm going to say on the show. And so it's helpful to talk it through with you first, but there's a lot that I think you're able to escape because I know that I'm going to subject the guest and the audience to it.
Well, I certainly enjoy our conversations anytime we watch, whether comic book related or not, movies, TV shows, whatever it might be. So that's, I think one of the bedrocks of our relationship is really digging and analyzing different forms of media. But I will say that certainly when it's something that I have watched where there are certainly books and shows that I have not read or watched. So it takes certainly more concentration for me to try to follow along with your analysis. Of course, your synopses and summaries are very good, but again, it just it's a little more difficult for me to try to follow along.
Fair enough. But I do always appreciate your patience and your indulgence and your engagement. Of course, I love all of the conversations we have, even if it's about something that you haven't experienced personally. But I have to say, I really enjoyed my second viewing of Supergirl. I enjoyed it the first time, but I enjoyed it even more the second time. And I think it was for two reasons. One, I was able to just watch it for what it is without constantly comparing it to the source material. When I did the first episode with DeVoe, the main thrust of it was really examining the film's adaptive approach to Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, to that comic book miniseries. Because as I was watching for the first time, that's what I was going through in my head. So this time around, I was really able to just watch the movie for what it is. But the other, more important reason I enjoyed it a lot more was I was seeing it with you. And I got a sense early on that you were enjoying it. I was seeing and hearing your reactions. And it was just a totally different energy being there with you. And so kind of seeing it through your eyes and seeing you enjoy it was great and really elevated my overall experience.
Well, I do what I can. No, I'm so happy to hear that. And it was so nice to be able to see it with you. But I have to ask, before we move on, I have to ask, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the second viewing?
That is a good question because I ended the last episode by saying I rated the movie 6.5 out of 10. And after a second viewing, I gotta bump it up at least one full number, I think. 7.5.
Okay.
It's definitely higher now. I mean, as far as the theater experience itself, that's of course a 10 out of 10, an 11 out of 10. But the movie itself, yeah, I think I would have to bump it up a good bit.
Great. Well, I'm glad to hear that you gave it a second chance so quickly and it proved worthwhile.
Yeah, but you liked it.
I did. I really, really enjoyed it. I went in skeptical, I have to admit, mostly because, I was coming into this with really no context. I had never read Supergirl comics, and my biggest exposure to Supergirl as a character even was the CW show with Melissa Benoist. And that's clearly a very different take on the character. I mean, almost polar opposites. But I really enjoyed Milly Alcock's performance as Supergirl after seeing her perform in this. I think she really did a service to the role. She really stepped up and showed that balance of strength and toughness and edge, and was able to reconcile that with the heart that's inside.
Yeah, I was so happy that you enjoyed it, in large part because one of the questions that I've been thinking about and that has been posed to me privately now by more than one person, which has been, who is this movie for? And a little part of me was getting worried that it's like it was just for me and people like me who knew the comic book Woman of Tomorrow and were familiar with the source material and what type of story this was going to be. And I really was curious how this was going to play for people who didn't have that background with that specific story, or didn't have that much of a background with the character, or like yourself, those who had a background with a very different version of the character. So I was getting a little concerned. So the fact that it played as well for you as it did was really, really encouraging. And I'm glad that any worry I had, maybe I didn't need to have it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I guess their target audience was middle-aged mothers married to comic book fans, or a comic book fan. But in all seriousness, yes, it's interesting. And I've been pondering that point of, who would this play to? And one of my initial thoughts was, wow, I wish that, it was certainly funny when she gave the middle finger in one scene, but I was like, oh, I wish it was like a little more tame. So like little girls and little guys, but little, I mean, maybe middle school girls could watch this and feel empowered, right? And know that they don't have to fit into the stereotypical box of being a girl or a woman or feminine. But I don't know, I think, but of course that's a message that would ring true for anyone. Being true to yourself. And there's many messages, not just ones focused on being a woman. So it's interesting. But I think having a little context is probably necessary, but it doesn't even have to be Supergirl specific. Just being familiar with the character of Superman generally, and knowing that, okay, she's his cousin, she comes later, having just at least at a minimum that reference point, and then it could be a standalone movie. I mean, I did, of course, enjoy that it was a continuation of the Superman movie from last year, and that we had some great more than cameos, but for lack of a better word, we'll call it a cameo.
From David Cornsweet, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, he had a sizable role in this, more so than I anticipated at the outset. So yeah, that was cool. With respect to the Kara Zor-El we get here, and this characterization in particular, which has been talked about a lot. We've been talking about it on these episodes, and it's part of the conversation about the film. Coming right out of that Woman of Tomorrow comic, you have this drunken, hard partying, traumatized Kara Zor-El who's flipping people off and cursing and all of that. And that is such a far cry from the Melissa Benoist iteration that you and I both spent a lot of time with when that show was originally airing. So clearly there wasn't any roadblock necessarily to you enjoying this, but I guess, how do you reconcile that? Or do you just chalk it up to, well, they're just totally different takes and it's fine and they can both kind of coexist in my Supergirl fandom? Or was there any adjustment period? Because it is a departure from that take specifically.
Absolutely. I think if I could understand that if there were hardcore Supergirl fans that were really enjoyed previous iterations of Supergirl and they were really stuck on that, then I could see how it might be jarring and even, let's say, upsetting to see that. I think for me, we've seen multiple iterations of many characters through the DC and Marvel universe, even in the comics themselves, right? So, and especially throughout various media. So I think I'm okay. That doesn't bother me per se. I mean, I truly enjoyed Melissa Benoist's characterization. I think it was, the goals were really different, right? And it was her humanity, and it was a very caring and in a positive way, softer character, and to really show her humanity. But I think the beauty of this characterization of Supergirl is that, her dealing with her trauma by drinking and, living as we see, she's living in the equivalent of, a rundown trailer and, food all over the place and, not in the cleanest environment. And then with the drinking, I think it beautifully shows that the human condition in a different way, because I think that's so relatable, whether to people personally or those we know, right? That a lot of people struggle with that issue. So it's so relatable in a completely different way.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, if I've had one complaint about the CW Supergirl series, it is that in a lot of instances, you could plug Clark into those stories and they would function largely the same. Mm-hmm. Whereas here, this is very squarely a Supergirl story. So they clearly delineated Supergirl and carved her out from previous iterations and from Superman himself and really found a distinct avenue for her. So I do have to appreciate that. I'll say too, and we were talking about this in the car after we got out of the theater, and building off of what you were saying about the drinking and partying, that at the outset, she is going to these red sun planets so that she can feel physically. She can feel the effects of alcohol where normally she can't, and feel a punch in the face, which she says at one point. And even questions like whether we should be red sun people to Crypto. But it's ultimately the emotional feeling that she needs to open herself up to. She needs to embrace her power physically, donning the costume under the yellow sun, but also then allowing herself to feel and grieve and take in all of that she's been shutting out. So I like that journey that she goes on and the flip that we see over the course of the movie.
Right. And I think probably part of it also is, and I'm guessing because as we discussed, we really don't get an origin story or, the specifics of events leading up to her taking off the suit. But I think this journey also allowed her, forced her to open up her heart to caring about an individual. Ruthie. Caring about Ruthie. So yeah, in the same way, like she really became, connected more with her humanity by opening her heart again. And I think that was, certainly a story that can ring true for many of us as well.
Yeah. I have to say, the things that I enjoyed the first time around and that I talked about in the last episode, I enjoyed even more now. And I have to say that Krypton sequence about midway through, really moving, even more so the second time. I liked the visual depiction of the planet, but more than anything, those scenes with her parents.
Yes.
That whole discussion of being good and what that means and what that doesn't mean. And the parting scenes with Zor-El. I mean, all of that was really resonant. How did that play for you?
Yes, agreed. I think it really shows her, her roots and where maybe her character had formed in her young teen years. So it was really nice to see. I'm a fan of typically an origin story, but I think that it worked where we got some origin story, but we also had a current plot line.
Yeah, I stand by what I said last time. I still think there could have been value in a Man of Steel or Batman Begins-esque approach to the flashbacks where they're interspersed throughout the movie instead of being clumped together. In fairness, though, I was reminded in rewatching it that they did carve out the arrival on Earth and that scene in the apartment in Metropolis. Those were separate from the Krypton piece. I still think they could have interspersed them throughout the film, but I still think it worked fine. What I did still miss, this is still a little bit of a gripe, even just one more scene, a montage would have been great, but even just one more scene of her trying to acclimate to life on Earth would have gone a long way. And even more so, I think showing Clark's fumbles in trying to introduce her to the world, because I do think it's clear from that arrival in the Arctic, he has an assumption about how easy this is going to be for her because of how easy it was for him. He's not recognizing that he came here as a baby. He doesn't have the experience that she has. We can read into that, but I think showing at least some of that would have been helpful.
Yes, seeing some of the relationship between Kara and Clark would have been, I think, powerful. But also, again, as we were talking about, that really seeing why she took off the costume. And, was it that she was just tired of saving Earthlings, or did something happen? Did she lose someone that she was trying to save? Was her acclimation, too difficult, or was it still understandably that she was still so hurt and missed her family and her home? So I think that there is a little bit of ambiguity that leaves a little to be desired, maybe a little gap there.
Yeah, I mean, that opening scene of Krypto peeing on the newspaper, you see Superman gets the big headline above the fold, Superman saves nuclear reactor. And then there's this little sidebar about Supergirl rescues a cat or something like that, something relatively minimal. So was it that she was stuck in his shadow? Was that part of it? I mean, we don't really know.
Interesting.
And it's like, especially if the moment of her donning the costume is going to be built up the way that it is, because it is a moment when she puts it on and then she finally appears and the sun's behind her and the music swells.
That was a great moment.
It's a great moment. And I loved the theme. Last time we talked about that Jimmy Eat World cover, which did work for me. I enjoyed it in that context. But the score overall, I did quite like, especially that main theme and the way, not musically inclined, so hopefully I'm describing this correctly, but it doesn't fully resolve until we're really deep into the proceedings and you have that big heroic moment and you get the full music piece coming together there. So it's such a big moment, and obviously you see she's not wearing it throughout the rest of the movie and you see it just kind of thrown about. So there's some seed that's planted, but I think they really needed to drive that home more. Like it needed to be set up in a different way that she's really taken it off in a major way.
Right. It would actually be more impactful when she put it back on if we knew that there was something big as a reason why she took it off in the first place. And it's interesting. I hadn't thought about that aspect at all, to go back to what you said about the comparison between Superman and Supergirl and looking at it from a gender perspective of she doesn't fit into the box of, a typical female superhero, or even, how women are supposed to act if she was, acting like that at all on Earth, or even just on a more general scale of, the man superhero gets more attention, or the scale of things that he's doing versus the scale of things she's doing, or like they're highlighting, that she saved a kitten, when she's certainly capable of, doing the same things that Clark does.
This podcast is an affiliate of BCW Supplies. The next time you need to restock on comic book bags, boards, boxes, and more, be sure to use promo code FSP to save 10% on your order. That's FSP for Flat Squirrel Productions. It helps support the show too. Thank you. I'm a parent, which means that a family-friendly comic shop is a must, and there's none better than Aw Yeah Comics. Visit one of their 3 locations, Harrison, New York, Muncie, Indiana, or Skokie, Illinois, home to our pal, Sweet Sweet Bernie. Follow them on social media and at awyeahcomics.com for news about signings, live sales, and much more. Their name says exactly how they feel about it. Say it with me now. Aw yeah. My comic shop closed over a decade ago, but if there's one place where I feel that same sense of camaraderie, it's Fat Moose Comics, New Jersey's best and oldest comic book store, led by current owner Sean Hendricks. If you're looking for something and they don't have it, they can probably get it for you. They know a guy. Visit Fat Moose in Whippany, New Jersey and be sure to reach out via the Fat Moose Comics Facebook page. I don't know what got left on the cutting room floor. I don't know what, if any, deleted scenes we're going to see when the 4K disc comes out, but I'd be really curious. I would love to know, especially given its relatively short runtime compared to other superhero films. Like, I wonder if there was more of an intention initially to go down those roads, because I do think that would have helped. And once again, as much as we can infer a lot and we can read a lot in from reading and watching other Superman and Supergirl stories, I still would have liked that to be present here. Now, a couple of things that landed for me more so in a positive way upon this second viewing. The humor, there were things I did find humorous the first time around, but even more so now. And I'm thinking about moments when Kara has heard Ruthie's spiel a number of times, and when she's explaining herself, I think it's to Lobo at this point. You have Kara mouthing along, very fun. When she pulls out the middle finger during the Techno Pirates invasion of the space bus. The teleportation, honestly, that's anher one. That battle on the space bus. The physical
comedy of the teleportation. Oh, when one of the bus drivers voiced by Seth Rogen,
yes,
which I think it was a great job that he did generally. But when they say, can we get closer? She asks him, can we get closer to the sun, the yellow sun? And he says, I don't have an engine or balls. And he said, so no. So that was another one. But yes, there were several humorous moments. And again, especially with Lobo in particular, he probably had the most instances that were powered by his delivery of some of those lines. Like, I'm so proud of you, to Ruthie.
Yeah. And even, I guess a lot of it was space bus related, but when Ruthie runs afoul of that other alien and Kara intervenes and she's like, you put your bag at her feet, you called her mother a whore by that.
Yes.
And that's the other big thing, or one of the other big things that I really liked and appreciated more the second time around. I really like how well versed Kara is. Yes. And she has this ability to navigate these different worlds and aliens and personalities and languages. Like, clearly she's been bopping around for a while here.
Right.
And you feel that. And I really like the way she was able to handle herself in all of these different situations.
So yes, I really like that. And it's something that's really not in your face. It's certainly more subtle, but yes, as you were saying that, I was thinking to myself, yes, she's like worldly, to an extent, a people person. She knows how to deal with certain people, right? And again, it might not always be in a nice way, but it's in a smart way. And it was interesting, like, she had never met Lobo, presumably. It didn't seem like they had met before, but she knew about him and she knew exactly how to get Ruthie out of that situation, right? Just with that humor of pretending to just be a silly girl. But yeah, it shows really her smarts and that she has a good head on her shoulders.
Yeah, I really like that. And going back to the bus and the Seth Rogen cameo, yeah, watching it for the first time, I'm like, man, that sounds like Seth Rogen. But for whatever reason, it didn't occur to me that he would actually have made a cameo. And I don't know why. I don't associate him with DC or Warner Brothers. I was like, there's no way it could actually be him. And then when DeVoe and I were talking, we were trying to look it up, and DeVoe was convinced it was him. And I was like, I don't know. We have confirmed it was Seth Rogen. And the connection is that the director of this film, Craig Gillespie, worked with Rogen on Pam and Tommy, that Hulu series, which we watched.
Yep.
So I guess he called in a favor there. But that was very fun.
I'm sure he had fun doing that, especially with the physicality of that character. He probably got a kick out of that.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked a good bit in the previous episode about the slight tweak to Kara's origin, especially in the modern context. And you know this too from the Supergirl show. In recent decades, the whole idea is that Kara is older than Kal-El and even cares for the little baby on Krypton. And she's meant to look after him on Earth, but either she gets stuck in suspended animation or the Phantom Zone, and by the time she arrives on Earth, her cousin's already grown up and become Superman. I'm recounting the the opening, the saga cell of the Supergirl show. So they do away with that here. And I guess in a sense, it tracks, because if we're really leaning into, and they are, this idea that Jor-El envisions Kal as this conqueror of worlds, I don't know that it would really make much sense that, Kara's going to go and look after him. So maybe that's part of the reason why they just shifted it and made it that she's born 8 years after the destruction of Krypton, and they avoided that altogether.
Right. And I think it also shows that disconnect where she doesn't even know who he is when he opens up her pod, right? It's not like, oh, here's Cal, right? They can't even communicate because they don't speak the same language. Cal doesn't speak Kryptonian and Kara doesn't speak any Earth languages at that point. So I think it shows the divide. And I think even all the way then skipping towards the end, re-seeing that divide again, how they are such different people because they've had such a different journey up to this point.
Now, counter argument, there could have been something interesting if they had stuck with her being older and Zor-El's thing had been like, yeah, you're going to go, you're going to follow, you're going to care for the baby. You're going to make sure he follows a righteous path, not this conquering path that my numbnut brother has set out for him. Like they could have done that. The other, not even necessarily counter argument, but the other thing that I'm wondering, especially since we are following in large part that Woman of Tomorrow miniseries, the writer of that, Tom King, really mined Kara's trauma in losing Krypton 3 times over. Because in the comic, she's a teenager on Krypton as it's being destroyed. And then she and her family and people flee to Argo, the floating city. And then you have the business with the kryptonite poisoning, like we saw in the movie. And then the ultimate impending destruction of the planet as there's a meteor shower and the lead shielding is being destroyed. And so that comic in particular really, really hit the nail on the head, this idea that she's suffered the loss of her planet essentially 3 times. And here they cut out that whole first part, but arguably there's enough, I guess, in terms of what we see on Argo. She's been through enough. I don't know that we necessarily need to layer yet more.
Yes, I think because I think we get that very poignant line where she says, Krypton didn't die in a day. That would have been easier.
The gods aren't not that kind.
Yes. Yes. So I think that goes to show that, how painful that experience, that one experience was.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I've mentioned you on the show before, particularly your love of dogs. So I'm curious, and we did talk about this ahead of time. If I gave you any spoiler, I think it was that it's okay. Crypto's going to be okay. But yeah, how were you with that? You seemed okay. Did the fact that Crypto was rendered digitally, did that help?
I think that helped. I think the fact that he was super powered, and we saw his superpowers a little bit before he was, shot with the dart, that helped. Yeah. So and knowing that, yes, he's going to be fine. Even if you hadn't told me, I would have suspected that, yes, he's going to be fine. And they didn't milk it too much. Like at one point towards the end, like right when they gave him the antidote, I was thinking, wait, they said it was going to be really painful. And I was like, oh, they didn't really show him in pain. And maybe it would have been, because it was a paralysis, he wouldn't have been able to, yelp or show what pain he was in. But I was glad that they didn't go down that path.
That's true. Because at the beginning, as Ruthie's translating, she does say that he only has 3 raises and he's paralyzed and he will pass and it will be painful. But yeah, you don't, thankfully they don't show him anguishing too much. So yeah, we appreciate that. I talked a lot in the last episode about these acts of empathy that Kara displayed in the comic book miniseries, like teaching Ruthie how to wash her hands and taking over digging graves on this planet that they visit, that were absent here. And I still can't get over the loss of the hand washing scene. I know you haven't read it, but it was such a defining moment of that. It's like, come on. However,
well, at least she shared her bug popcorn, whatever that was. I don't know why that. I forgot about that. I forgot about that until just now. I don't know why they thought that was necessary.
Yeah, I don't know. It was also, she is so well-traveled. You would think that she wouldn't have been so surprised.
Yes. I mean, yes, just from a logical standpoint. And then, yeah, this was a new snack for her. I mean, it looked very intentional. Like she went directly to that popcorn-ish machine and like, oh, this is the snack I want.
Yeah, absolutely. But so I do still think that some of those moments from the comic would have had an effective place in the film. However, on rewatch, what I did pick up on more were other instances where you do see another side to her or more heart to her or simply her heroism. And I do think even more so than the comic, because here the art performs beautifully in the book, but here you're actually having actors emoting. And certainly the scenes with Kara and Crypto, home is wherever you are, buddy. Don't you freaking give up on me. Like all of that I thought really landed. And just moments like when Lobo is taking out one of the brigands and Kara is really quick to swoop in there and grab the civilian who would have been taken out as well. And just her constant looking out for Ruthie and putting her in a corner when things are about to go down. There were more moments than I think I initially clocked that did kind of show the other side of the character. Even if I wasn't getting the exact moments from the comic that I think would have helped, there were other moments that I think got close to accomplishing a similar idea.
Yes. And I think maybe, for me, like I said, I think it was sufficient. And maybe that was an intentional choice to kind of keep her edge a bit, right? And have just glimpses of her heart where she's, very wary of caring about an individual. Like, she was willing to help Ruthie, even though she didn't know her and wasn't going to help her long term, but, helped her get her sword back. But, they wanted just glimpses of that.
Yeah, she's ever the reluctant hero, but she finds her way as we go along here. So maybe the biggest question, because I think it's something that will continue to be discussed and debated here, is at the film's climax, Kara's killing of Krem of the Yellow Hills.
I didn't mind it. I think it was a satisfying ending because my biggest fear leading up to that scene during that scene was that they were just going to say, oh yeah, don't kill him. And then just not let him go, but like have no resolution. Like, are we taking him to prison? Are we locking him up? Are we castrating him? So I was very glad that was not, an open-ended final for that character, but I did not take issue with her killing him.
Okay. So I guess ultimately I don't either. I don't begrudge Kara the choice that she makes there. I do still think from a business perspective, it's insane that Warner Brothers would go down this road again after Man of Steel and the reaction to that. But that's more of a business decision. Creatively, yes, I don't, and people will disagree with me on this. That's fine. Send in the comment. I'm okay with Kara having a brand of justice or heroism that is distinct from her cousin within certain parameters, right? I wouldn't want her to be killing left and right, but I think in certain circumstances, her willingness to cross a line that Clark wouldn't, or that he wouldn't cross as easily, I am okay with that. I think, I don't mean to keep harping on the comic, but I think there's another avenue they could have taken that would have been a little bit of an in-between that I think could have played a little bit better, where in the comic, there's this sequence where Kara's on one of the worlds that has been ravaged by the brigands, and they've captured one of them. And the people of this world stone him to death. And Kara allows it. She follows the customs of this world. She doesn't participate, but she allows it. And I do think there could have been another version. I agree, we don't want her to let Ruthie kill this guy, but she could have left Krem to Lobo or to the child brides who were freed from the space arc. And that could have been an even more satisfying payoff where they're enacting their justice, their revenge, and she's allowing that to happen, which is not something that I would see Clark doing necessarily. So you're still carving out that distinction, yet you're not bloodying her hand. So I'm not saying they should have done that, but I think that could have been a viable pathway that still could have accomplished the same end game.
I don't think I've made a final decision on that aspect of it. However, I think it was significant that there were two stabs, right? She first says, this is for Crypto. So her revenge, right? So they're both on this journey to revenge, or mission for revenge. And, for Crypto, she stabs him in the stomach, arguably recoverable from that. And then she says, this is for Ruthie, or that little girl, and deals the lethal stabbing or slitting of his throat. And, we could see it as, oh, she's, getting revenge, or, for what he did. But I think maybe we can flip it and look at it as she is saving Ruthie in that act, right? Because she knows that Krem needs to die. But yes, that's taking justice into her own hands. But again, maybe it's showing that what can happen, what a person might be capable of after significant trauma. And maybe from a business standpoint, it's intentional to create that moral divide between Kara and Clark.
So I don't disagree about that, but the only reservation I have is it's all well and good to draw that distinction, and they've done it for the audience, but if we don't get to see any payoff between Kara and Clark, then I think they're leaving something on the table.
Absolutely.
And so that's the thing that I do hope is followed up. And I said this to DeVoe because we were talking about, what's the significance of Lobo witnessing her killing of Krem? Is it just that, I see an ally in her and that's it? In my view, it's I have to imagine at some point Lobo will be in contact with Clark.
Oh, yes.
And this will come out. And I would be curious where that leads. So if they explore that, then I think it's even more worthwhile. So fingers crossed on that front, because I think that really would be a missed opportunity if this is just never talked about between the two of them.
Right. And I think even more so because in that final scene when Kara returns home and she doesn't tell Clark exactly what happens. She just said it. I can't remember what she described it as, but she doesn't tell him. And I think it seems pretty intentional.
Yeah. He broke my heart a bit when he's like, I could have used your help. I could always use your help. He misses his cousin.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm the fact that we had a Superman movie and now a Supergirl movie and then another Superman movie and they're guesting in each other's movies. Amazing. This is the first time we've gotten Superman and Supergirl together on the big screen. We've had them on the small screen, but on the big screen. And no, the Flash doesn't count to anyone who's already starting to type that out. We don't acknowledge that. Ever wonder what would happen if a person who knew barely anything about comics decided to absorb hundreds of Superman stories from all eras and media? That's exactly what Robbo is doing on This Podcast Will Never Die, which starts with all the ways the Man of Steel stood out on the newsstands in 1938. Listen and subscribe to This Podcast Will Never Die, and you'll never look at Superman's trunks the same way again. I talk about Smallville a lot, but when it comes to listening, one podcast is at the top of my queue. Always Hold On to Smallville, hosted by our pal, Zach Moore. Zach and his guests bring tremendous insight, passion, and humor to each and every episode. And while their series rewatch has concluded, the podcast continues with more great Smallville and Superman talk. Listen wherever you get podcasts and keep an eye out for the other shows on the Always Hold On To network. We love digging into epic comic book runs, but what about the art of the single issue? Single Bound is a podcast series hosted by married couple Amy and Logan as they review single issues of comics, many of them starring the Man of Steel, Logan's favorite character. Listen and subscribe on Spotify and YouTube, and follow the show on Instagram at Single Bound Podcast. Step into the refraction with Drunken Avenger #1, The Volunteer, an indie comic by Rick Reason that turns the tropes upside down. 4 men died in 9 seconds. John Stevens survived, but survival has a price. Now, the government calls him a variable. The media calls him the Drunken Avenger, and the city of Meridian is caught in the crossfire between civil liberty and national security. Follow at Drunken Avenger on social media for project updates and previews. So the other piece that I think I've made with this, watching it the first time, I think it was either a little muddled in its presentation or I just got a little tripped up. I don't know, maybe a little bit of both. Because Kara repeatedly throughout the movie is trying to talk Ruthie out of seeking this revenge, trying to kill Krem. On Planet Bilky, Kara actively intervenes when Ruthie's about to make her move with the sword. And so it seems like there's this message about not killing, but then obviously Kara kills herself. So it's I don't know that that's really the message. I think I was circling this last time, but to kind of bring it home here, this is my interpretation. You tell me what your read on this was. But I think what it comes down to in terms of the lesson that Kara is trying to impart, that she's still learning herself, is about how to carry that grief, deal with that trauma. And that the means that Ruthie is pursuing, that's not the ultimate path. But that when Kara kills Krem, I don't see it as her doing what she told Ruthie not to do, because she's doing it for a different reason. Yes, there is this aspect of this is for my dog, but like you were saying, she's ultimately doing it to spare Ruthie from having to do it herself.
Right.
And that's different. So yeah, I don't think the point of this is, oh, don't kill. I think it is more about how we deal with that trauma. And Kara has to learn how to deal with that trauma herself and allow herself to feel these emotions.
And I feel like Kara is trying to prevent Ruthie from following in her footsteps, because I think deep down, Kara realizes that no, she is not dealing with her trauma or hasn't dealt with her trauma in the best way. So in a way, she's speaking from experience. And you had asked me, do you think Kara has killed before? And yeah, I said I would probably say yes, because there wasn't much hesitation when she did. And it certainly wasn't self-defense at that point. Again, not to say that he didn't deserve it.
Yeah, we did talk about that, because the way Kara talks to Ruthie and tries to talk her out of seeking revenge, it really does seem like Kara is speaking from experience.
Yes.
So if it turned out she had taken lethal action in the past, that would track. Alternatively, I do think there's another valid reading of it where it really does tie back more to this idea of processing trauma, for lack of a better descriptor, like processing trauma. And Kara has the experience of not processing it, or processing it, quote unquote, in an unhealthy way by going off and getting drunk and ignoring her feelings. And maybe that's kind of the experience and the regret that she's drawing from. Not that, yeah, I've killed somebody who wronged me before and it didn't help. Maybe it's not that. Maybe it's like you're not dealing with the grief that you're feeling. You're channeling it into this quest for revenge. I've channeled my grief over losing my world into this hard partying, and that's not the way.
Okay.
I think either reading is probably valid, and we might get an answer down the line, but I think that might be more, and that's where I say, I do feel like it could have been articulated a little bit clearer. I think the ultimate point lands, but I do think they could have maybe teased that out a little bit better.
Agreed. Can we go back to the final scene with Clark and Kara? Oh, and making note of when he's sending messages to Kara. And again, you can feel that, him missing her, and he says, maybe you'll find your place here, right? And I think, yes, on one hand, he's wanting her to come home and, maybe realizes that she's not on a great path, but there's no other Kryptonians on Earth. So he himself wants his the only member of his family left living, back with him.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I do hope that in Man of Tomorrow specifically, and we do know that Milly Alcock will have some role in that. I think that's all but confirmed, if not officially confirmed. Yeah, I do hope that's an angle that gets some play. Like I said, there's a lot that we can kind of bring to the proceedings, and seeds of ideas that are already there. But I do think, it would be great to see that play out. And I do appreciate with Clark the fact that he's reaching out to her at all, but also to his credit, it's so funny because we've talked a lot here in the Silver Age of comics in particular. Superman was very authoritarian towards Kara, plops her at the orphanage, tells her when she can reveal herself to the world, when she can be adopted. He withholds his secret identity for years. It's a different era. So here I did appreciate, I think, a relatively light touch from Clark, all things considered. Like, I got the sense, and I love David Cornsweet in the role, and I got the sense that Clark was trying to employ a light touch and was probably not saying as much or being as eager as he wanted to be. I kind of got that sense in those video messages, especially. So we talked about the killing of Krem, but as far as Krem and the brigands generally, and this very dark business about enslaving and trafficking these child brides, you had a very interesting sort of alternative take. Do you want to share that?
Yes. I mean, my first thought when they revealed, who the brigands were and their mission, I was like, wow, that is really dark for, a superhero movie, and one that already has, some comic relief in it, and to take that dark turn. However, I think it's a reality and an important issue that might need to be explored and exposed, that, it's, and that, in the context of, not just aliens, but it happens in the real world. However, then I took issue or thought that they could have elevated it to where, the sex traffickers and child sex traffickers did not have to be the stereotypical bad guy savages, right? Ugly and gruff, but they could have been, men with money and power, right? Which is a lot of times where the sex trafficking actually is happening. So I think that they could have elevated that storyline and kind of exposed another side of crimes and criminal justice.
Yeah, I was really struck when you brought that up because I thought that was an intriguing idea, and it would have created, I think, a really interesting counterpoint to Kara and even Lobo, because if you have this group that presents well and polished, but they're sinister, and then on the other hand, you have Kara, who is rougher around the edges, but has a good heart. She is good. She's not always kind and she's not always nice, but she's tough and she's not always nice, but she's good. and even Lobo himself, he has his redeemable moments as well. Yet has this monstrous appearance. I think that would have been an interesting flip. It's funny too, because Rich Roney and I talk about this all the time when we do our George Reeves Adventures of Superman discussions, especially in the color era of the show, but really throughout. The villains, 99% of the time, are these very well-dressed gangsters, very polished. And I think Rich has maybe that wore on him a little bit now or as a kid as he was originally watching them. But the thing that I've brought up is, in its own weird way, I think that show in the 50s was imparting a valuable lesson. Just because someone presents well, dresses well, speaks well, seems like they're on the up and up, doesn't mean that you can automatically trust them.
Right.
And appearances can be deceiving. And so I like your pitch. I mean, I don't know exactly what that would have looked like in the context of this movie, especially given how we were really leaning into the seedier side of the galaxy. The Brigands definitely felt in keeping with that, but I don't know. I think there's another interpretation where the Brigands could have kind of presented themselves as the saviors of this corner of the galaxy, for example. And then you find out that, oh no, there's actually something much darker going on.
Right. And someone had commented during the movie that, their mission was to further their bloodline or, to keep their, and it's almost like said, and it's like, oh, that's their reasoning. And it's almost like, oh, okay, that's why. But if they want to continue their bloodline, but then which is all male, but then they kill the women. So how is that? That doesn't really make sense, which kind of tracks with, the intellect of a society who would do that. But so that was a little strange, either that line or, it didn't sit great with me.
Not to jump to something lighter, but it did make me laugh in the theater when Kara was at the home of the barkeep and she sat down for tea or whatever that drink was meant to be. And you were like, you audibly said, don't drink it. And it's funny because when I spoke with DeVoe for our last episode, he was like, yeah, I was there in the theater and I was saying, don't drink it.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, from the moment, I think they dropped some hints from the moment they walked outside and you see the man bar owner talking to one of the gangsters, alien gangsters. It's like, you knew there was something not right. And so for everything, when the woman tells them, oh, stay in this room, it all seems a little, something's amiss.
We are not the biggest Star Wars people, but how did it play? This whole spacefaring adventure, the alien bars, all the different aliens themselves, the different languages. How did that work?
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed that aspect of it. Yeah, at first, my thought before, the movie even started was thinking like, oh, this isn't even taking place on Earth. Like, what is this going to be? But, I think the characters and the interactions especially between Kara and the various aliens were done really well. And yeah, that's where some of the comic relief came from. And yeah, the speaking of the different languages, whether it was on Krypton and hearing them speak her home language, or how she just, immediately can speak a variety of different alien languages was interesting.
I got to tip my hat to the actors. And look, they're professionals. They get paid for this. They have dialect coaches. I'm sure it's broken down phonetically for them, but it's one thing to have to learn a real language, but it's like they're learning with Kryptonian in particular.
Right.
Those were extended scenes.
Yes. Yeah. I was surprised that they were speaking Kryptonian for so long in some of those scenes. It's hard enough to learn a different language. It's also hard enough to memorize lines as an actor. So I can't imagine trying to juggle all of that at once.
Yeah, I said this last time, but I do still feel strongly about this. I do think when they were on Krypton, we could have heard English with the understanding that they're speaking Kryptonian to each other. But for the sake of the audience, we're hearing it in English.
But I think that drove home the point when Clark opens up the pod.
Sure.
So I think it was fitting because we see her speaking all different languages, right? And then so I think it would have been a little wonky to hear them speaking English on Krypton, and then it wouldn't have really made sense that if she was speaking English all along, even though, if we were hearing English, even with that understanding that, oh yes, they must be speaking Kryptonian, it wouldn't have hit as well when Clark opens up the pod and realizes she doesn't speak English.
Just like Lobo said in that moment where he's like, "Aren't you that ditz from the bar?" And she's like, "Funny, that's how I've been referring to you." And he's like, "Touche." Well, similarly here, I think that's a good point about the language. I think really though, it's a testament to the movie that I did enjoy this spacefaring adventure as much as I did, because like I said, I'm not the biggest Star Wars guy. Whoa, did I struggle through Mandalorian and Grogu recently when we went to see that. And I know I was in the minority. You and our son loved it, and our friends that we went with loved it, and that's great. But man, not for me. I've enjoyed other Star Wars movies.
Yes, we're not the biggest Star Wars fans, but we enjoy the franchise. Don't undersell yourself or it.
I know. I think recent years have kind of worn on me, but at its best, sure, I would say I'm a fan.
I thought we were going to do a Grogu podcast.
We mentioned Lobo a couple of times. What else stands out to you about him?
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed Jason Momoa's performance, as I typically enjoy his performances, but I think he did a great job of embodying this character of this lovable bad guy. But he's a bounty hunter. He lives by a certain code, as he says, a steel code, and we see him doing arguably some good, but helping in his own way, even if it's not intentionally helping, but he does end up helping, and he certainly saves the day at the one point when Kara is about to be beheaded. But the one issue that I did have was that after he kills his target, then he starts dropping grenades all over, and he looks back at Kara and it's, this like, good luck, or like, I know she's like, oh no, that's her face. So I feel like that took away a little bit. I don't think he needed to actively destroy, knowing that, they could also, the girl and Kara could also die in the wreckage of this. Now, he didn't have to say, hey, jump on my bike and save them, but I don't think he had to like put them in more danger than they already were.
Yeah, fair. I'm sure there were discussions about how redeemable / heroic do we make this character, and so maybe, I don't know, maybe that was a result of that calculus. But yeah, it was fun. I mean, I'm assuming your frame of reference for this character is probably DeVoe's cosplay, right? Yes,
100%.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'd be lying if I said I had anywhere near the affinity for the character that DeVoe does, but...
You mean DeVobo?
DeVobo? Oh! We might have coined something there. I feel like someone must have said that at some point, but not that I've ever seen or heard, so count it. But there have been a number of Superman or Superman-adjacent stories with Lobo that I have really enjoyed, and yeah, there is something about that code. Like, Superman can deal with him. And if he makes a deal with him, usually Lobo will adhere to it. Okay. So as much as they can be and often are at odds, nevertheless, he's not he's not in the full-on villain category. He occupies more of a nebulous space, and that's always interesting. So I think this was a solid launch for this character in the budding DCU here.
Great. I'm glad you enjoyed that. And I think I think certainly that it was a great representation of a morally ambiguous character where it's like, yeah, they're after the money, but you know, their word is bond, and you know, they'll stick to a deal.
Yeah. I know we've already talked a lot about Kara's characterization, but just as far as the toughness and her fighting style, like how did that all play for you?
Oh, I picked up on that and made note in one of the first fight scenes where they didn't make her, quote, fight like a girl, right? I thought it was very powerful, and I like that, her whole style, her whole embodiment of that character.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, like I said last time, I didn't come out of the theater after round one over the moon about the movie, but I enjoyed it. I was positive overall, but I've really my appreciation for it and my enjoyment have grown with this second watch. That's why, aside from wanting to see it with you, that's the other reason why I wanted to go back and see it again. Is there anything we haven't talked about that you want to talk about with this movie?
I think we've hit on all the main points and some things that we hadn't thought of previously.
The last thing that I have is I did like, even though we didn't get an answer really, I did like that Ruthie, and by extension the film, brought up the idea that Kara is referred to as Supergirl, even though she's 23 and not that much younger than her cousin.
Yes.
And it does make me think of, I think it's the pilot of the Supergirl TV series, where Cat Grant names the new superhero Supergirl, right? And Kara's like, well, she should, you know, she's not a girl. And then Cat Grant has this whole speech about being a girl and how it's cool and badass and all of that. So I'm glad that was addressed there in the show. Here, I'm glad that it was brought up. I wouldn't have minded a little resolution to that, but so it goes.
Yeah.
Were you relieved that I didn't want to get any of the official Supergirl popcorn buckets?
I'm not relieved, but yeah, I mean, nothing popped out at me that I happened to see. I don't remember exactly what they looked like.
Because I'm pleased with the newsstand bucket from last year from Superman. I'm glad I got that.
Yes, that one's very unique, and I like how it's a real thing miniature-sized into a popcorn bucket.
Yeah, I display that proudly. It's great. I think I store stuff in there. I can't really remember. I'll have to check. But the funny thing is, really, though, out of the two of us, you are the collector of popcorn buckets.
I am.
Disney specifically.
Yes, Disney popcorn buckets. But I also have been known to purchase popcorn buckets at Sesame Place and Legoland as well.
That's true. But all to say that if one of us would have to be talked out of getting a popcorn bucket, likelier you than me. But in any event, I didn't feel the pull this year.
Interesting.
Merchandise-wise, I do plan on picking up a couple of the Funko Pops. Not the full line. But I think I got to get a Lobo. In honor of DeVoe, I feel like we have to have a Lobo.
Of course.
And a Supergirl, because I have the Kara Kent from Smallville. And she counts, but she's not in costume. So I think I need a proper costumed Supergirl pop.
Right.
So I think I'll go for that. Otherwise, and the shirt that you and Milo got me for my birthday, the Supergirl shirt, which I love.
Have you seen what the pops are going to look like yet? Have they released images? Does it have the jacket?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. An interesting twist on the typical Supergirl costume.
And the jacket, I think, works better on that pop than it does on that novelty cup.
Yes, I would hope so.
Which I don't think we can actually describe without being demonetized on the various platforms. So we'll leave it at that and people can look it up. Well, listen, thank you very much, not just for going with me to see the movie for my second viewing, but for joining me to talk about it. I always welcome any opportunity to have you on. I know normally it doesn't call to you. But for this in particular, I thought it would be great to get your perspective and especially just kind of seeing the reaction that you had. I'm like, well, we have to do this. So thank you.
Thank you for taking me to see it and for having me on the show. And yes, I have to say, I think when you first asked me if when we were going to see it or if I wanted to see it, I was like, if you're going to go opening night, then that's okay. I don't have to see it in the theater, but I really am glad that I saw it in the theater and had that viewing experience and was able to experience it earlier rather than later.
Well, thank you once again for joining me. Hopefully this won't be the last time that you're here on Digging for Kryptonite. Audience, I appreciate you continuing to tune in to our Supergirl movie coverage. Make sure you come back tomorrow for the grand finale as Mike and I go through your comments and questions and reflect on opening weekend for the film. Until then, as always, it's about what you do. It's about action. Support the show and receive exclusive content by becoming a member at patreon.com/Anthony Desiato. Rewards include our DCU spinoff podcast, advanced listens, sponsorship opportunities, and more. My sincere thanks to all patrons. Please rate and review the podcast via your platform of choice, subscribe so that you never miss an episode, and continue the conversation by joining us on social media. By popular demand, Digging for Kryptonite merch is available at our TeePublic store. Visit the link in the show notes to get your DFK shirts, hats, mugs, and more. Flat Squirrel Podcast is also home to Lighting the Bat Signal, a Batman fan journey, which applies the signature Digging for Kryptonite approach to the Dark Knight, as well as another exciting episode in the Adventures of Superman, now in its final year covering the classic George Reeves series. Subscribe today. Digging for Kryptonite is a Flat Squirrel production. Key art by Isaiah Simmons and theme music by Dan Pritchard.